Hey guys, we're here live. You got Lisa Ward hosting you tonight with Empowered by Disadvantages. And we got
Jamil
Olivia
Bay.
Tashay. Sorry,
What's
Jamal.
up?
That's how those
don't pass no
Geminis
more.
do.
Yeah,
That's what we do. We even speak on cue. That's what's happening. That's how we do it.
Hi,
you
everyone.
could
I'm Olivia Tashay.
And I'm Jamil Bay.
you could tell that we really in sync because we didn't really plan the color coordination, but we all got a little red, a little blue. Only thing person missing some red today is the one who loves red, but we ain't gonna mess with it today. We ain't gonna mess.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. What had happened was,
What had happened was I had on red, but it wasn't my advisory shirt, so I had to change out. And you
Yeah,
didn't
because
put red in this. So,
yeah, that's a Jamel thing. So Jamel, tell our people's, our guests, our streamers, who we got on the show. What the show's about today.
well, we got an awesome guest today. His name is Darius Mayfield. He is actually the congressional candidate for the New Jersey 12th District. Um, Definitely a colorful personality, and from the time we met, I've definitely was excited about having him on our podcast. I'm just glad now that we're actually going to be able to share him with people who don't know
okay.
I think he's coming up in a few minutes.
him. There
Hey,
you go.
Hey
what's
guys,
Hello.
going on?
Hello.
hello. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited and just as honored. So I'm glad, like you guys, we met. You guys said you wanted to do something, and a few weeks later, here we are. So that's how we
Here
like
we
to
are.
appreciate it.
Most definitely, definitely. And we want to definitely educate people about politics and make sure they understand a better outlook of things. And that's what the show's about. But, we kind of funny, so you can relax, have fun, joke with us. I'm going to tell the people right now, he's a LeBron James person, which is nice.
He
Okay,
ain't by himself, so I got his back. I ain't trying to hear
whatever.
none of that.
There
Whatever.
you go, my
Listen,
man,
listen, listen.
Listen.
Y'all not
the,
talking about
the
football.
GOAT,
I'm not.
greatest of all time.
Y'all not talking about football. I'm not even part of this conversation.
Basketball,
No.
too funny.
But for all those true Laker fans, y'all understand how we feel about LeBron. I like him. I'm happy he's there. But, anyway,
Man,
we're not even
if
going to go there.
y'all better show LeBron some respect, or y'all still wouldn't have a ring. He brought y'all a ring, man. Show that man some.
Mm. And
That
the
part.
man has shut you down before we can even ask him any questions. Look at that.
I'm not shut
That
down.
part.
I'm just trying to be nice because, I don't
Back
want
on
people
it.
to think that, I like LeBron, but, people try to say he Jordan, he ain't Jordan. That's another conversation. But before we go there, because it's going to be long if we go there, because I got
Yeah.
true LeBron people, like, they don't really know. Anybody who's true Lakers, y'all understand. But Liv, can you take over? Because we're not
Yes,
even having this conversation.
absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Darius, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well in yourself.
I'm doing well. I'm just going to ask you a few questions, digging into your lifestyle a little bit. Just give us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, my name is Darius Mayfield. I'm originally from New Brunswick, New Jersey. Exit 9 off the turnpike. I come from very humble
Ah,
beginnings. Single mother with a little sister. Again, very, very humble beginnings. Grew up on welfare, food stamps, all those things. Just a kid from the hood, to be honest with you. And, I
okay.
always let people know that it made me, the man I am today, because oftentimes when you're in the type of political setting as myself, people will often prejudge things without actually knowing who you are and where you're from. So it's important for me to let people know exactly who I am, where I'm from, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm very proud of it. And again, it made me the man I am today. But just growing up in humble beginnings with my mother, my little sister, and one of the reasons I'm such a proponent for those that know me of something like school choice, because to me, nowadays, especially, we do have school choice that people don't realize, and it's called athletes. They often come in our neighborhoods in the hood and
Mm-hmm.
get the best athletes out of those schools and bring them to suburban schools and give them the opportunity because they want something from them. My mom was
Absolutely.
actually able to create her own school choice for me where, when I was very young, growing up in the hood out there, I went to breakfast one day in the morning with my boy Jaja, and we were walking down the hall at Lord Sterling. I had to be in like first or second grade, and somebody went in between two garbage cans and picked up a big knife and started chasing me and my boy. So I ran all the way home from school that day, and my mother said, "You never have to go back there, and we'll figure something out." A week or so later, she actually went to my aunt who lived in South Brunswick, which is a suburban neighborhood and decided to use her address to send me to school there in South Brunswick. So she
I
would,
think we've all done that.
yes, she would get up and drive me every single morning to my aunt's house. About a year or so into that, somebody ratted us out and found out that I wasn't actually living there. So they pulled my mom into the office and said, listen, you got two choices. Either you can keep your son here and we're going to sue you and, for sending your kid to a different school district, or you can take him out and send him back to New Brunswick schools. Now, the only caveat was that they said, you don't have to send them back to Laurel Sterling because, as we know, in those neighborhoods, you live in a certain section, you have to go to a certain school. But they said because of what he went through, you don't have to send them back there. We'll let you go somewhere else. So I ended up going to Woodrow Wilson in New Brunswick. And I'll say I didn't get a knife pulled on me on Woodrow Wilson, but I could obviously now, having gone to a suburban school, clearly see a distinction from the things I was doing there, where I was introduced to this whole new world, choir, music. I was playing the trombone in South Brunswick, different things like that, to going back to New Brunswick to that school. So we went there for a little bit, and my mom just understood that there was something different about me, and she understood that, she understood those distinctions. So what she did was she moved up everything she had, and mind you, this is a woman on welfare, working at the welfare office at the time, and she moved to the poorest part of that suburban neighborhood next to the trailer park. So me and my sister could go back to that school legally. Had she not done that, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys so articulately and, doing the things that I'm doing nowadays, like running for Congress, starting a foundation, running businesses and things of that sort. So school choice is very, very important for me, especially when I look back to some of the neighborhoods, even just in my district, like Trenton, New Jersey, where right now over 80% of the kids can't read or write at a school grade level. For me, there's not enough emphasis on these things. There's not enough frustration about these things. There's not enough anger about this thing, because these are the generations now that we're losing. But this is 2, 3, 4 generations, 5 generations we've already lost to these things.
And I was going to ask you that, me being from Camden, New Jersey, is it worth from the time when I was going to school versus now? Has it gotten any better, or is it getting any worse?
It's gotten worse, a lot worse, especially, when they start introducing some of these, and I'm sure you're going to dive into this stuff, some of these new curriculums, and they want to dive into these different things. My first question is, well, why even introduce some of these things when the kids that go to these schools right now can't comprehend at the proper level to even understand the things that you're introducing them? There's a much wider problem. There's so much corruption in these school districts. The actual, last year was the first year on record that the New Jersey Teachers Union spent more on political activities than they did for actual educational work. So that's no longer a union. That's a political organization, that's backing certain things.
Right.
So how do you feel about the no kid left behind rule? Because I think when they started that's when a lot, you're just passing a kid and they're not learning what they need to learn in that particular grade level.
It's interesting because you're absolutely right. I agree with you 1,000%. Some of the things that the Bush has tried to do in there, Obama, these things just didn't materialize the way that, the words made it seem like they would. And, it's kind of funny because this happens with a lot of things nowadays. When you talk about it the way you just talked about it, a lot of people don't even believe you. But you actually go to these school districts, the kids will tell you. I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago. The kid said, listen, you pass now in a lot of these schools just for showing up. You don't have to do the homework. You just show up and they're passing you.
And they'll pass you.
How dangerous and bad is that? You go to certain schools and school districts in Baltimore, there's 50, 60, 70% dropout rates in these schools. Again, thank God my mom had the wherewithal to say, listen, I'm going to do better for you guys. And again, that's why I'm a champion for school choice, because we got to take it out of the hands of these teachers unions and frankly, these political figures in these, neighborhoods that are a part of the problem, that are part of corruption, not getting to money to where it goes. And they clearly don't care about our kids. They don't. I mean, they wouldn't be letting these things happen where, again, we have lost generation after generation. There's a reason why now you see things happening that we all didn't really see growing up. You go to Philadelphia now, you go to certain urban areas, in underserved areas, you see 300 kids walking in a CVS and a line and robbing the entire store and walking out of that store. You see so many things happening, and this is because a loss of those, skills within these kids. They feel like they have nothing to live for because that's all people are telling them nowadays. Nowadays, you turn on certain channels, all you see is them telling Black and brown kids why they can't accomplish something. When I was coming up, thank God I had a strong family. My grandfather and grandmother had 15 kids. So yeah, we grew up underserved, but we had a large family. So I had a lot of uncles that would come in and keep me in line because I was a bad kid. But my uncle would tell me almost every single day, you can do whatever you want in this country. You need to work hard and you'll get to where you need to be. Nowadays, we're telling kids the opposite. You can't do this because of that. And I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that ideology. And there's a reason why we're seeing the results we see right now because of people teaching our kids those things.
Well, I will say, yes, a lot of it is the schools, and the teachers have their jobs and they need to do what they need to do. But a lot of it is
Parents.
It has to start at home, the foundation at home. You can't ask these teachers to do their portion of their job and the parents aren't doing what they need to do. It's like the parents are almost scared of their kids, and their kids are their friends.
Right, but then you have to deal with the fact that you got babies raising babies. So we come from a generation where people are having babies so young that they're not mentally mature enough to really comprehend certain things.
And that then comes from the lack of education in their generation.
Right. And then
it's been regressing.
Correct. And the schools don't have, I'm one of the kids that got lost in the system. So the school have anything, like at least we had music, we had sports. The only thing they still have now is sports. In some school areas, you might get music and band, but in where we're from, we don't get those things. So
there's no after school programs anymore either.
Right.
Nothing.
So one of your major things is you're really big on school choices and things like that. But you also mentioned that people doing the right thing is one of your major reasons why you got into the politics. But my question is, why did you pick being a Republican over a Democrat? And can you educate people that even if you one party, you still can support the opposite party?
Yeah, and thank you for that question. I know we talked about this, a little bit the other day. One of the things that strikes out to me, and as I was telling you guys, I think, and it's been designed this way. This is where the education, the aggression of our education really hit the psyche of our people, and it really is holding our people down. Because one thing I've observed and learned is that as a people, Black people don't understand the power that we really have in this country. Like I told you guys, the question, like especially when I'm in a hood walking and things like that, one of the questions I like to ask people is, how many Black people do you think there are in this country? And the number one answer I get is 1 million Black people. Now, the facts are there's over 1 million Black people in just Detroit, which is the most populated Black area in this country. There's almost 50 million Black people. When you really dive into it, we actually are the second largest group of people here. And I know they talk about the Hispanics a lot, but when you break down the Hispanics, it's Colombians, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, a lot of people that don't even consider themselves the same. It's a large block of people. We're talking about 50 million, Black people in this country. We're talking about straight descendants of slaves. Both of my great grandfathers were Native Americans that married free slaves. My family can trace all these things back. So when it came to being a Republican, the first time I ever voted in my life was in 2016. And it was just some of the messages that I heard, because I'm a result-oriented person. And I know they were able to wrap a lot of people up in the emotion and the propaganda of everything. And again, that comes from a lack of education, a lack of understanding of certain things, where they can just tap into our emotional being and get people emotional and use those trigger words. So you use racism, you use, this, it's just going to trigger people. And we're already, because we've been through so much already and there's so much trauma there, they know how to tap into that piece of us. And the less educated we get, the easier it becomes to tap into those things. So I noticed those things, because I respect the nuance of everything. I like to look at both sides. Again, that's why my motto is not Black, not white American. It's about us progressing as a country at the end of the day. And that's not to take anything away from our Black identity or what we're doing. But, and I think we talked about this a little bit. We have a unique opportunity right now, or at least we had one over the last 4 or 5 years, where you could have actually had, and we did in some ways make some progress, but you could have actually had people that the Black community look at as almost an enemy, that were actually advocating for a lot of the policies that would help our communities, like school choice, like lower taxes, like big, really increasing entrepreneurship in our areas and things of that sort. So when I looked at it and I thought about running, one, to really run as an independent, you really can't right now in a lot of areas unless you're up in like Vermont somewhere. So that really wasn't going to be a choice because I always really considered myself more of an independent conservative. But as I just, again, got into the issues, and that's what it's about for me, you know. And as I told you guys, I understand people, especially with Trump, that didn't understand his personality or didn't like his personality, didn't appreciate his personality. I get that. I don't think people are wrong for feeling that way. You know, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New Jersey. We can take a little bit more. So a lot of those things didn't bother me because I can know we can talk the way we talk out here, and I'm not a hypocrite.
Right.
I'm not going to sit there and cast aspersion on somebody else. And like I told you guys, that's why when he made that Access Hollywood comment and said what he said about grabbing and all that for the Black community, and I've heard people like Mayweather and everybody else say the same thing. Like when for the Black community, some of them to come out as strong as they did when all people have to do is say, listen to the music that we listen to in some cases. Like, what are we talking about? Like, that was the wrong issue to kind of jump on and tear this man down when we actually praise a lot of the things that are even worse, you know, than what was said in an instance like that. But when I looked at the policy and the specific policies were things like lower taxes, you know, which specifically helps communities like the ones that I come from to help them progress, to help them actually start saving certain things, a little bit that they have to, you know, build up themselves within the society and make themselves self-sufficient when it comes to obviously school choice. Because to me, education is the number one thing that we can fix in this country and specifically in underserved communities to really put us back on the right track. If we don't do that, there's no chance of doing this because the generations of us that are actually educated, we're already grown. We're already there. It's these babies right now that are no longer educated and they're the future. So if they're the future and they're the ones that are going to be running stuff, you know, it's just going to be a repeated cycle. And that's what a lot of these people wanted. And then when it came to things like outside of just our community, like a peace through strength international policy, I mean, if you watch what's going on right now under this administration, we're getting our clock cleaned all over the world. It's a very scary time. It's a very dangerous time. And I don't think enough people understand how dangerous it is when they're challenging the dollar, where they're now, because of the weakness and the fecklessness of this administration, are openly challenging the dollar, disrespecting this man at every turn. Listen, you can say what you want about Trump, and when he was in there, we didn't have those things happening because people understood who they were dealing with, and they understood, you know, almost to a degree, the uncertainty of what he was capable of doing and what he would do. Because like myself, he is a man that's very conscious of the American dream and the freedoms that we actually have and want to preserve, you know, as a people. And I was saying on the podcast yesterday, right now, what we did, we just put the status quo back in there. The monsters are back in control. And you see it in the things that are happening where they really don't care what's happening to the people. That's why they just keep marching forward and doing what they're doing as everything keeps regressing. And we're sitting here, they say the right words, they pull people's emotional strength to make them feel good, but everything around us is crashing. You know, in the hood right now, I mean, between inflation, you know, people can't, I visit food banks, the food banks in Franklin in my district, they have the longest lines and more people than they've ever had in their history. When I go to Trenton, New Jersey, and I'm out there with these people, I mean, one of the things I found with school choice, with the education out there is one of the problems they have is a lot of kids aren't even going to school. The reason is because if you live within a 2-mile radius, they don't provide a bus. So now you have kids that if they walk to school in a place like Trenton, New Jersey, which is one of the murder capitals, one of the violent capitals of our state, you got kids that are being recruited on their way, never make it to school. And then what we found is I was visiting houses where these people just had their kids at home. They weren't even sending them to school. So until we start fixing these things and being able to have honest conversations about these things, nothing's ever going to change. But for me, it really comes down to the issues and the policies. And that's why I chose to be a Republican. And I will say to you guys this. I'm not the type of Republican that's just going to go along to get along. If I think my own party is doing something wrong, I'm not afraid to call that out. I'm a man of no fear. I come from the freest
Okay, then I can totally respect that.
I come from the freest generation to ever walk this earth, right? So we talked about the stuff with Ron DeSantis, and I told you guys how I feel, and, you know, that goes against the grain of what, you know, many conservatives may feel, but I have no problem calling, my own party out and what they're doing because that's the right way to be, and that's what a lot of these other races do. We're the only race that excoriate a subset of our people for having a different political view. But when you look at Indians, when you look at Hispanics, they're pretty much split 50-50. That's why Jews, they're split 50-50. And that's why they can actually leverage their power because they do have that split. Democrats, we can't leverage any power. They don't believe we have any power. We're a joke to them because we vote 90 5% of the time the same way. So they know they can just keep counting on that vote, which they always have, even though a lot of times what we're voting for is a detriment to our own communities.
We got some people asking some saying, well, one's a Trump, you have a Trump supporter in here.
I see him, Trump 2024.
Yeah.
Listen, when I told you guys yesterday, when I go to the hood, forget speaking to people like us that are blessed and, you know, we've been able to come up and pull ourselves out. When I go to the hood, which is a lot of what I did when I was campaigning, a lot of people in the hood like Donald Trump, so you know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a big Trump supporter. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not.
I know.
But we do have somebody said they should read the thing
as it should be. Well, they were saying as it should be. You know better, you do better. So I agree with that. So you're a Republican. How's life for you as an African American Republican overall?
You know, I get that question a lot. Somebody said, not in my hood. Listen, go out there and talk to somebody. Go out there and talk to enough people. There's a few people out there. I'm not saying it's overwhelming, but it's a lot more than what they actually show. And again, I went to Trenton, New Jersey, and knocked on over 6,000 doors. Guess what they told me when I was out there? The Democrats won't come out there. They don't knock on doors out there. They're scared to. I was in the projects. I was in those 30 story towers where they specifically told me, Bonnie Watson Coleman doesn't come out here. You know what she did one time because we started forcing them to do something? She brought a truck out there. She wasn't there. It was her team that went out there. They went to the hood where I was knocking on doors, cracked the window and threw candy out the window. This is what they think of us. Like, if people aren't paying attention to these things, they want to keep making jokes about stuff and really not comprehending this stuff. Again, while we just keep regressing, while everybody around us, all these other communities are progressing regardless of what's going on around us. And we can't seem to get out of our own way and stop really beefing with each other and like just try to understand, the issues and what's actually going on. We don't have to agree on everything, but there has to be some type of mutual respect and understanding. So to your question, how is it being a Black Republican? I'll say this for me, and people have asked me this a lot. I don't have the problems that you see for a lot of people. Like you see them being called coons and this and that, because once people talk to me, once they hear my story, once they look me up, they know who I am, right? I'm a real dude. I'm almost use the wrong word there. I'm a real dude, right? I come from the hood. I'm talking to you guys like straight. Like I was locked up at 17 because I was out there robbing and doing crazy stuff. And I got locked up and, I was locked up for a couple of months. I was the only guy in the crew that didn't get out in a week because my mom didn't have the resources to get me out. So I had to stay there, until trial. One thing I said to myself while I was in there is I said, I'm in 23-1 for 3-4 weeks. I can't go to the bathroom when I can't do anything. I'll never be here again. When I got out and we beat that case, never had another interaction with cops since then. Right. And been working on the things that I'm working in now. So I was able to, because of my education, because of my family, I was able to fall back on those things. A lot of people that come from these communities don't have those advantages. Right. And it's on people like us, incumbent on people like us, to help guide them even through, how hard it may be sometimes. Because again, you go to some of these places and you may get pushed back. Everybody wants to make a joke out of everything, whether it's not in my or not this one, whatever it is. But for me, when I meet people, they understand my sincerity because, again, I'm doing things that people aren't out there doing. For the last 4 years, I've been doing something called the American Cleanup, where I take conservatives to urban areas and we clean up their neighborhoods. We've picked up over 80 tons of trash. I've done Philadelphia 4 times. I've done Camden, New Jersey. I've done Trenton, New Jersey. I've done Patterson, New Jersey. We've been all over the hood with straight, and sometimes, in some cases, MAGA Republicans. I was able to bridge that gap between people. I'll never forget in Camden, New Jersey, this Muslim lady came up to us, and I'm sitting there with my partner, who is Priscilla Comfrey, who runs New Jersey Women for Trump, and she came up and just started crying. She said, "We never thought we'd see you guys here," because when you watch TV and when you're watching the news, they'll make you think we just hate each other. It's just going to be a problem. I'm out to get you. That's not what it is. I've been to Trump rallies in Georgia, been to Trump rallies in New Jersey. They'll try to tell you that I'm in there with the KKK and something happened. I've never had one bad experience in those things. It's been nothing but love. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, right? Because people will
Right.
take that the other way and be like, oh, he just thinks it's all good. No, there's bad people on both sides. There's racists in the Republican Party. There's racists in the Democrat Party. The racists in the Democrat Party sometimes are worse than the ones in the Republican Party because people that aren't educated can't even spot a racist in the Democratic Party. You know, they don't understand those
Right.
policies are doing exactly what they were designed to do from those people that don't have your best interest at heart. At least on this side, if I know somebody is what it is, like we've seen people trying to come into some of our events with Confederate flags, we kick them right out of there. Get out of here, bro. You're not coming in here with a Confederate flag. Again, I'm not your typical Republican. You're not just going to get away with things.
Right.
I'm not just going to bow down to what you want to do. I'm from Jersey. I'm a Jersey boy, bro.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm with you there.
Jamel,
So,
read we have a couple of statements that we got. We do have to touch some of the statements, please.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. Jamel, you want to touch on that real quick?
Definitely. Well, I do want to say hi to Mrs. Virgo, as well as Queen and Farah. I definitely appreciate you dropping in. But I just know that when it comes to perception can definitely be misleading. But I do see where Queen actually just said that we need to reorganize ourselves. Everything we need for our people, we can provide ourselves. We have educated people who can do a little bit of everything. We should be self-sufficient in our own town. And I know that from that, accountability has to be held also.
yes.
And we have our senator in Delaware. She's great. She comes out. She goes to different organizations, support everybody. She's a big supporter of the LGBTQ. So I would say, just like I actually like you, because as a Republican, you're probably one of the ones I only like right now. But Democrat wise, we have. I think, like you said, it's individual people do individual things, and you have to really judge a person based on their actions and the things they do. That's why we chose you for the show, because even though we're not Republican, we definitely like some of the things you were saying. I'm not a big Trump person. I have seen Trump or rallies do some really crazy things to minorities, but that's not you. So I can't really hold you for who you like. Like you said, this is a free country. We have a right to like and support who we want to. The other thing is, how do you feel about the fact of what he's going through? If he is wrong, is doing illegal things, and that's anybody, would you feel that he should be punished for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that breaks the law has to face the law, right? I don't care if you're white, black, Republican, Democrat, anything. I mean, again, I had to go through my own experiences when I was young to get to the point I am now. So I had to face those things. So there's definitely not a time that I think anybody should be circumventing that process when they do things wrong. I do believe in the rule of law. In this specific case, it's just so interesting because a lot of what we see, and again, this comes down to just being educated, understanding, and actually wanting to understand things and not just being partisan, which is on both sides. It really irks me sometimes, but it just is where we are right now. And I just got to maintain who I am to help keep reaching out to people and hopefully opening up people's minds. But, when it comes to a lot of what he's going through now, it's not really supposed to be criminal charges. A lot of these things are civic or civil, especially in the past instances, like when it happened to Bill Clinton, they had the tapes in his sock drawer and things. These are more civil matters. These are not supposed to be criminal matters. This is not a matter of espionage where he's being accused of sharing classified documents with other people. As I told you guys, in the last 3 or 4 months, we found out that Mike Pence had documents at his house and certain offices. We found out that Joe Biden had boxes right behind his Mustang in his garage in his house, at his Delaware offices and his old universities and things of that sort. And, with the Presidential Records Acts, a lot of these things become civil and they're able to get rectified through that process without going through this whole big rigmarole. And what we saw was last week or a week and a half ago, the DOJ came out and said they're not going to charge Mike Pence for that, right? And the reason they're saying is because these guys just return things. But when it comes to Joe Biden, he had Senate papers from his Senate days in his house. That is, just so you know, a lot of presidents, most of them, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, President Trump, have taken papers and files after they left office. Never has a senator done that because it's literally illegal for a senator to do that. And they went in his offices and found things from his Senate days. So for us to be here and for you to now make something that's usually civil, something that the last DOJ declined the charge Trump on because they understood that fact. And now you're making this case against your arch rival, the number one man on the other side that's in the polls. And it's almost like I told you guys, it's almost like they're pushing for him to be president, because every time they do this, a lot of people in this country have the same understanding that I do right now, don't like it, and his poll numbers go up. I think the other day they said he raised $6 million. As soon as he was indicted, he raised $6 million within 24 hours because people aren't liking what they're saying. So I'm just for equal distribution of the law. If you want to go after Trump, and it's fair that you're going after Trump for what you're doing, whether it's civil or, criminal, even though it shouldn't be criminal, do the same for everybody else, whether it's Obama, whether it's Mike Pence, whether it's Joe Biden. We need to be equal in that front. And for me, especially when it comes to Black people, this is just another example of when we kind of get in our own way. A lot of people would have just been better off saying nothing, because if we're sitting here complaining all the time about us being unequally treated by the law, but yet you're sitting here praising somebody and not even understanding some of those simple facts that I just put out there, and then praising the same person on your side, that's done the same thing, but is not being brought the same justice, it just adds to the hypocrisy and just adds to the division of this country. And I can tell you right now, what's happening, what they're doing to Donald Trump and what they're trying to get away with, it's really dangerous for this country. It's not good. And one of the things people need to recognize is when something like this happens, especially with this man, they've been trying to get him since he was president. We found out the Russia thing was fake. In fact, we found out the Hillary Clinton campaign paid for what happened. And Obama and Joe Biden knew about it. And she told them that I'm going to do this to try to get him out of the race or try to make him look bad. It's kind of egregious and disgusting, when these things are happening. But if they can do this to this man, right, just look at what's going on beneath the surface. Every day since they announced this on the same day that Republicans finally came forward and said, we now know that Joe Biden took $5 million and Hunter Biden took $5 million from Ukrainian officials in Ukraine. Ever since that time, now we have the FBI, and most people watching this probably don't even know this, that the FBI came out and publicly said they cannot unmask their confidential informant on Joe Biden family because they're afraid if they do, he will be killed. Right? We just found out yesterday that somebody in Ukraine, one of their top, say snitches, moles, or whatever the case is, was killed yesterday in Ukraine. This is a serious matter, and this is all going on while they're sitting here talking about a payment to Stormy Daniels, even though during his whole 4 years of his presidency, they told us this man was an arch criminal. He was the worst criminal in the world, but yet they're charging him with keeping some files. And the Stormy Daniels thing, it's very diabolical. And again, unless you're willing to have an open mind and really understand these things and look at it from both sides, because there's things like this happen on both sides, right? It's really right now about the establishment versus the people. And that's why I say with Joe Biden back in that office, the monsters are back in there. The monsters won. They're sitting here telling us anything while we literally got a mob family running this country right now that we now know we're taking bribes back to his day as a senator. It's really dangerous times that we're in. And that can happen to this man, Donald Trump, that, listen, whether you like him or not, whether you hate his personality, he did a lot for Black people when he was in that office. Black
before you go there, before you go,
because we have a couple questions we need.
Yeah, we do got a couple questions.
So, I'll start with one. So do you think big corporations deserve the big tax breaks that Republicans believe they deserve? The big corporations don't even pour back into the Black communities to make them rich.
And you got a couple of questions. So
yeah, I did see that question. I'm glad you asked that one. I know they're talking about the tax cuts that Trump, signed in when he was president. Well, it's funny because those tax cuts did a lot more good than harm. Since those tax cuts, every single year since that, we've taken in record numbers of taxes since before that time. So every single year since that, we've taken in more taxes than we ever taken in this country's history. It's because they closed a lot of the loopholes within that. They started enforcing a lot of things more where they went in and went after that money. They closed a lot of loopholes. What also happened was we had an increase, the biggest increase of wages while this man was president after they did that, because businesses did started going back and investing in certain communities. We had the opportunity zones, which a lot of Black people that have money were starting to take advantage of, right? Where it actually required the things that we want. It actually required not only that you'll get a tax print, a 10-year deferment if you go into an underserved neighborhood and open up a business. You also were required to hire a certain percentage of people from that particular neighborhood. What have we complained about before when it comes to gentrifying these neighborhoods? These corporations are coming in, they're supplanting our people and then bringing other people in. right? They're gentrifying our neighborhoods all over and kicking black people out. Where I grew up in New Brunswick on Commercial Ave, where the projects was, they tore down that projects, moved every black person out of that neighborhood, put up like these little, nice apartments. Now that whole area is completely gentrified. Those same people aren't there. They're spread all over the place, right? So when it came to those tax breaks, we had the largest increase of wages in this country because of that, actual legislation. And it just kind of took the reins off of some people where people were going into areas. Now, it's interesting because when we talk about black businesses, I was just actually watching something the other day. They just took a Walmart. They closed down a Walmart in Chicago. I forget what part of Chicago it was. So the first thing, of course, I'm going to just tell you, the white liberal media did was they went on there and they said, this is racist. Walmart is taking another store out of this community, da, 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 da. This black lady got on there, and I've seen this happen all through Trump's thing, but they would never show these black people because that's not a part of the agenda. They can't do that because it's too logical. But this lady went on there. She said the reason they closed it down is because they were losing $4 million, I think, a month out of this store because they were getting robbed so much out of that store. You see what's happening in California right now, where you will literally get in trouble. They are telling their employees, when people just come in and snatch stuff off the shelf, you can't do nothing. If you do, we will fire you. This is where we are right now. CVS is now locking up things. Everything's going behind the counters. Everything's going behind glass. And we can't sit here and talk about this stuff logically. And I understand why we can't sometimes, because again, it goes back to the educational issue, right? When I went to Trenton, New Jersey, the elders in that community, black Democrats, told me, first thing they came up to me and said when I came to one of those events, because they weren't used to Republicans coming out there, I was the first Republican to ever have yard signs all over Trenton, New Jersey in a black Democratic neighborhood because they knew who I was. The first thing they said to me was, we understand these guys are doing certain things with cheating, and we understand that they come in here and they prioritize the uneducated community and really coming in here and propagating people and using that against us at the end of the day. People understand these things, but they've been made to feel like they can't speak this way. They can't talk these things. They're a coon. They're going against their own people. It's not right. And to me, the coons are the ones that don't understand this and can't, accept people for who they are and have intelligent conversations. So when it came to that bill, it actually did a lot more good than it did harm in this country. I think people forget that before COVID, which that's a whole nother story why that happened and how they got Trump out of there. But before COVID, all the media was saying, whether it was the right media or left media, was if things keep going the way they're going, this guy's going to win re-election by a landslide. Black unemployment was the lowest it's ever been in this country. Female unemployment was the lowest it's ever been in this country. Asian unemployment was the lowest. Hispanic unemployment, it was all the lowest it's ever been in this country. Black entrepreneurship was up 400%. They weren't telling you this, but I'm sitting there reading the articles. I see what was happening with these things, and these things were actually happening in this country. So it's about the results. And we need to stop thinking about the feelings of everything and really understand, what's happening. We're about prosperity. We're about keeping money in people's pockets. We're about people becoming self-sufficient, right? And that's what we need. I think that's what our communities need. That's what the older generation always understood. And they're so disappointed by what they see right now and the things that are going on with this younger generation. I can tell you that from fact, because I actually go out and talk to the people.
You have another question?
So we have another question.
Go ahead, Jamel.
Jamel, you want to go?
Sure. So the question, your thoughts on affordable housing. What is your proposed plan to fix this epidemic happening across our country?
Yeah, so I'm all for the concept of affordable housing. Again, I grew up on welfare on Section 8. We had Section 8 vouchers, living in the projects in New Brunswick. So I understand that, especially in the position that we've been put in, there's a lot of people that can't just pick themselves up by the bootstrap right now and go get that $3,000 a month apartment and things of that sort. So again, we need to start with education and kind of build ourselves up. Here's what I find interesting, and again, this is why they use these telltale signs, these keywords, to just keep us inebriated and just keep us down. They went after somebody for Trump that is saying, or, most Republicans for saying, stop bringing these affordable houses into these suburban communities, right? Stop doing that. Because it is overpopulation. They are doing a lot of things that's affecting everybody else. First thing they said, because this is their key phrase, racist. Well, what happened just a year ago? Dave Chappelle, they came to his neighborhood where he has a lot of money invested in that neighborhood. Said, we want to build affordable housing. He said, you build affordable housing here, I'll take all my money out of here. Did we call him a racist? Did we call him a racist? I'm telling you, it's diabolical. the way that we just let things beat us down and we just kind of run with it. Nobody called that man racist. In fact, a lot of people understood why he was saying what he's saying. So instead of
they call Kanye West racist. They gave him a hard time.
But again, that's my whole point. Without understanding, now he did when it came to the Jew, he said some off kilter stuff. But even when it came to him, when it came to the Jews and everything, the first thing I said was, well, when I was growing up in this country, when I was growing up as a kid, we had conversations in my family about the Jewish community and the unequal control that they had over, certain things that we were doing, our intellectual property, especially when it came to the entertainment industries and stuff like that. But now, and I can understand why, because Kanye West is not the best orator, right? So some of the ways he said certain things, you're going to have to come at him. You're talking about declaring DEFCON 3. I mean, what are you going to say? You can't, that's not really the way to go about speaking about these things. You got to be a little bit more intelligent than that when you're speaking. But that's not his mission. That's not his goal. He's not the best orator. I could orate it in a better way and come out and say, that's why they're scared of people like me. They don't want me to get there. I'm not the crazy extremist that they're going to try to tell you I am just because I'm a Black Republican. Right? That's not me. I'm a very, I'm educated. I'm very articulate. I'm very thoughtful. I have a huge heart. All I do is give back, right? I go into these communities with no security. I go in there by myself sometimes and I do what I do. Like, it is what it is. I'm a normal person at the end of the day. But so that was really interesting to me when the whole Dave Chappelle thing happened. This dude literally came out and said, you put one affordable house here, I'll take my entire $10 million investment out of this. So what we need to focus on is kind of what I was just talking about before, where we have, and again, it's mostly Democrats that run our urban neighborhoods, right? But what have they done when it comes to housing? They've come in, they've gentrified our areas, and they've kicked us out and they've displaced us. So we've lost more ground and more land, over the last 30, 40, 50 years than we ever did. Just like we lost more farmers. 50 years ago, there was 1 million Black farmers in this country. Anybody know how many there are now? 5,000.
Not that many.
There's 1 million Black farmers in this country 50 years ago. There's 5,000 now in this country. So we're literally voting for people that are gentrified our neighborhoods, kicked us out of our own neighborhoods. So for me, yeah, we need affordable housing, but why don't we build that affordable housing right where we are and stop letting them displace us out of our neighborhoods? Why don't we start teaching financial literacy and make sure we have plans and we start holding our politicians accountable where this is our neighborhood. We do want you to bring those businesses in here, but we also want you to draw up a plan where we can start taking ownership of the places that we live in, rather than displacing us and letting other people come in here and own these things. And that building that was $250,000 when they moved in here is now $5 million. We lost out on all that. We lost out on all of those things. And you see some people, especially the older Black generation, I forget what it is specifically in California, that actually fought for years for a white family that kicked them out of their house out there. It was like this estate or whatever it is. 2 years ago, they won that case. They got that estate back and got paid millions of dollars for that because they understood, that generation had that educational mind to understand those things. Nowadays, again, and it all goes back to education, we don't even understand those things. People, even some people now probably say, man, this dude is just a coon. For what? I'm speaking facts right now. I'm not talking about giving somebody else the upper hand. I'm talking about giving us the upper hand. At the end of the day, I own a home. I own a home on an acre of land on a lake, right? On a river, right? I got a jet ski I throw in the water. I live a great life. I'm a blessed person. I know how blessed I am, but I want to see more people be that blessed. And again, I didn't come from money. I came from very humble beginnings. Again, Section 8, welfare, that's where I came from. But luckily, again, I had a family, I had the wherewithal, and I was able to go through experiences like being locked up that time that really taught me, like, this is not the direction that you want to go in. So I believe in affordable housing. I do think we need affordable housing. In places like Trenton, New Jersey right now, I think we need 50,000 units that they haven't even started to build right now. So there's a housing crisis going on there right now. But we need to do it in ways where we develop plans. And that's why one of the worst things.
And we got some more questions for you. Go ahead, finish that
last point. One of the worst things we did in not electing, and again, I don't want to make this about Donald Trump, but not electing him, people didn't realize the fact that Donald Trump actually offered Black people a form of reparations in his second term, right? Ice Cube went to the Trump team and he said, what are you going to do specifically for Black people? He said, here's the Platinum Plan. The Platinum Plan, they were going to designate the KKK a terrorist organization, as well as Antifa, and put $500 billion into specifically Black neighborhoods, to open up capital, to encourage business, more entrepreneurship, to spread out the Opportunity Zone Act that they already passed and make it even bigger. That was directly going to go into Black neighborhoods. He went to the Joe Biden campaign with Kamala Harris and said, what are you going to do for Black people? They said, we'll talk to you after the election. Well, they still haven't had that conversation.
Wow.
All right, good. Next question, Jamel.
Now, the next question is from Queen. As an educator in my own local community, why are teachers underpaid but expected to do so much?
And can you answer some of it short? Because you on fire right now. You got a lot of questions.
Yes.
So I get going when I start talking about these things. But like, I mean, I agree. That teachers are underpaid, and it's only going to get worse because what you're seeing right now is that they let the educational system digress so much that a lot of the actual good teachers are retiring, and a lot of the people you see right now are people that are just getting out of college. It's a lot of younger people, which is why another reason why our kids aren't getting the education they deserve, because all the good teachers aren't there. They weren't being paid enough to deal with what they have to deal with. When I moved to I was bad and I was young, like I told you guys. So at one point, my mom said, I lived with a lot of people, went to a lot of different schools when I was younger. My mom said, I'm going to send you to Newark, New Jersey with our pastor, Dr. Gloria Harris. You got to go live with her and her husband because you're just too bad for me. I went there. I went to Velsburg Middle School. I went there the first day. The first day I walked into that school, I walked up the steps and I seen a girl run up behind a guy and stab him in the neck with a plastic fork. This is the type of things that was happening. When I was in class there, and again, mind you, I had started going to some of the suburban schools. So now I'm understanding and seeing the clear distinction. Like, wow, these are two different worlds. When I was in school there, it was literally like scenes out of Dangerous Minds. I'm sure you guys all know that movie, Dangerous Minds, with Michelle Pfeiffer, where she first came in, they throwing spitballs at her, cursing at her. This is how these schools are. And this was 15 years ago, right? Imagine how much worse a lot of these things have gotten now. This is how it was there. So a lot of these good teachers are leaving. You got a lot of these younger teachers that are replacing them. That's part of the reason why you see so many teachers. How many teachers have you guys seen in the last few years that are getting caught up with messing with students and stuff? You got these 26-year-old teachers, these young teachers that are getting caught up in all the wrong stuff, but actually educating your children at the end of the day. So that's where we need to have that choice. One of the things they'll try to tell you is because he advocates for school choice, he wants to close down and defund public schools. I went to a public school. I'm not trying to defund public schools. Here's the difference. I went to a public school in a suburban neighborhood that had no problem. I basically got the same education that you will at some charter schools and private schools. But if you went 2 miles down the road to that underserved community, that public school was the worst thing I've ever been to in my life. Right. So it's not about public schools. It's about the neighborhoods those public schools are in. It's about the school boards. It's about the Board of Education that are covering those places. That's what we need to be talking about. So my school choice is a way to put pressure on those public schools. I don't want to close them down. I want them to excel. But if we keep going the same way, they're not going to excel because we're not forcing them to. You start letting people build charter schools. You start giving people their tax dollars to let them send their kids to private schools. I guarantee you those public schools will start to shape up real quick because they'll start losing more and more and more money. But right now, while we don't have those choices, that's why the teachers usually won't allow you to have those choices. This is going to stay the way it is. So I'm all for teachers being paid more, but I'm also for us retaining those teachers that have been proven, that have tenure, that can at least guide some of the people that are coming in as those new teachers are coming in. We can't even do that right now because those tenured teachers, they're gone. They're like, we're not dealing with this. This is nuts at the end of the day. But I absolutely believe that our teachers are underpaid, but we need to fix our school districts so we can pay them more for doing the right job. And I will say this, I come from the business world. And I know you can't do this, right? But I was born and bred under some pretty tough people in the business world. Multimillionaires, billionaires, like I seen how they operated. If it was up to me, I would go to every single underserved community that has these 30, 40, 50, 60% dropout rates, that has 60, 70, 80% of their kids not reading and writing at a great level, and I fire every single principal, every single board of education director in that community, kick out every single union and put the right people in there and get the job done the right way. Unfortunately, we can't circumvent the system like that. So we have to go through this slow roll. But while we're going through this slow roll, we're going to keep waking people up so we can get these things, man.
You have a very important question. Sorry, Jamel, to ask that.
You have two important questions.
Yeah. How do you feel about trans healthcare? Though not happy in the bodies that they are in, and also how are you going to help, because education is very important to you, how are you going to make life better for kids who are in the LGBT community?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, yeah, if you're a full grown adult and you're a trans person, you want to get gender changing surgery, you want to do those things, that has no bearing on me. You're a grown adult and you deserve those things. So absolutely, you should have every single right as anybody else in this country for every single procedure that they can get done at the end of the day. I know trans people. I have gay friends, like I told you guys. One of my best friends in the conservative movement, Scott Presser, who does a lot of work over this country, is gay. So I have no problem with that community. The thing that I do, and I think a lot of parents do have a problem with, is how far, especially the left on this specific Democratic politicians will go on this. Do I believe that we should allow 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds to decide they want to have gender changing surgery without the permission of their parents? Absolutely not. I don't even think parents should be allowing them to do that at those ages, because these are kids. They don't know anything yet. They don't know what they want. They know what they see on TV. They know what they see this person do. They don't know what they want. And I thought as a nation, we were a lot smarter than that at the end of the day. So first, to even be having to have this conversation now, I think is crazy. Now, I'll be honest with you. It's
totally
crazy. In
agree with you.
Right now, they are putting a law together that will basically, if you are a minor in California and you go to your parents, let's say you're 8, 9, 10 years old, and you go to your parents and you feel like they don't understand your gender identity or don't want to allow you to have that gender changing surgery, they can now take your kids away. This is where we're going. They will now be able to take your kids away for that. So we are pushing, one of the things with Democrats I see a lot of times, they just go too far. Nobody is against the LGBT community. Nobody is against trans people. There's a lot of gay people in the Republican Party. I don't know if people understand this or know this. There's a lot of gay people in there. I don't see them being accosted, harassed, or anything. It's some of these more extreme things that they are setting up to do. The lesson plans that they're putting in schools in New Jersey right now for kindergartners and first graders. There are some things that should be left to a parent to decide to teach their children. We don't all have the same beliefs. We don't all have the same religions, and again, there's other groups outside of the direct American ones we're talking about that understand these things. The Jewish community, they have some of their own things, their own teachings. The Hindu community, the Muslim community, they have these things. They understand these things, and they're giving a lot of pushback on this stuff too, and saying this is exactly why we have it set up this way. But we really need to just stop and breathe sometimes and understand that it's not about hate. It's not about going against a certain community. But when you get to the point where you start seeing teachers on social media tell a kid in class that if your parent doesn't understand what gender you are, I'm your daddy, I'm your mommy. I know a lot of people, the way I grew up, would have walked into school and punched that woman in her face for ever saying that to one of their kids.
But you got the part where the reason that stuff is coming, because you do have parents that are not supporting their children. And you have to understand now, the suicide rate on kids is high. So I think it's just another way where they're trying to, you have this child who is trying to kill themselves on a regular basis, right? Because they feel this way. Somewhere in there, you're going to have to find a middle. And then you have parents who are throwing their kids out and they don't have parent support. So if they're stepping in, I think that the reason that they're doing what they're doing, I think is out of trying to help those kids who don't have parents doing what you're saying they're supposed to do, who's not helping. Then you got a kid who's saying, hey, I'm not okay. If you don't help me, I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to cut myself. So it's those things you can't really just ignore. So you got to come up, like you said, with laws and things that can at least help children, even if it's something we don't agree with. We still got to make sure that they get old enough to be able to make a later choice at a later time. But that child is not here later, then what are we doing?
Well, that's why I'm speaking about it going too far. And that's why I'm speaking about it going too far. Go ahead.
Not interrupting anything. Like, I have 3 kids. 2 are grown. I have a 14-year-old. I've always tried to keep an log with them, no matter how they felt. So I never shunned them about, oh my gosh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But as a parent, you still have to set the guidelines. You have to set the rules. Again, you do what you want when you turn 18, better yet, 21. But as the parent, It's my job to guide you the best way I can. Now, I understand little people have minds too, and they have thoughts as well. And yes, we can meet in the middle, but your middle is not going to overpower my middle at this point, especially at a certain age.
Well, and that's why I said
And
it's about like especially on the left right now, because this is really an issue on the left, going too far with things. I agree with you. Of course, we need to talk about those things. I when I was in high school, and I never really even talked about this publicly, I was depressed. At one point I tried to take my own life. I did, because I had thoughts of that, and it was the people with strength around me. And I did come to realize that I wasn't really depressed. I was more so seeking attention. I didn't have my father growing up, and there was a lot of anger, with inside of me that I didn't understand in those things. But I had a family that talked to me. I had an uncle, that took me under his wing and, showed me how to be a man in certain instances. So I absolutely agree with you. And people do need that when it comes to the LGBT community. I completely understand that, and I agree with you. But there is, as you said, your parents are your parents, and it's your parents' job to teach their kids certain things. And it's not for the government or the school system to overpower that parent. In certain ways, they can be there as a support system. But when you start hearing things like the government coming in and saying, we will take your child away if you just feel like you don't understand them, this is when it should start raising red flags, right? I was listening to Charleston White the other day, and he said something very interesting because he does a lot of work, did a lot of work with kids and things, growing up. And, one of the things that he said, and I saw this happening in Trenton because they were actually telling me a little bit about this as well. And I do want to dive into this more and learn more about it, is what they're doing now is, with these certain things, a kid only has to say like one thing, whether it's their gender identity or they feel a certain way. They are now taking them and classify them and getting money, getting paid. The school districts are getting paid money to send your kid to an institution, right? Sending them to an institution at the end of the day. And this is just, in some cases, another way to actually do that, right? Through this gender identity thing. So if they're telling you right to your face that if we feel like you can't talk to your kid about their gender identity, we're going to take your kids away from you, they're telling you the time is here, right? This is the time where those things are going to start happening. And we're just putting ourselves in a not being able to have an open, honest conversation from both sides. Because again, I think there's validity to what you're saying. I think there's validity to what she's saying at the end of the day. And there does need to be that happy medium. But as the government that we know thinks they're God, they've always thought they were your kids' parents. They're the ones that came in and told the Black community, if you kick the husband out your house, we'll give you more money on welfare to start making people more dependent. We all know these things, right? And we're sitting here letting ourselves get put back into that same cycle on different issues that are literally just completely destroy our communities. So I think within that community, there needs to be a more respectful conversation. I think some of the things that you see from both sides can be a little bit extreme, whether it's coming from that conservative side of things when it comes to this issue, or when it's coming from the LGBTQ community itself, that can be a little egregious in the way they approach people, in how demanding they are in certain things without having that respect, around people's own beliefs and, having civil, intelligent conversation about things. So there does need to be a happy medium in those things, but we don't need the government, whether it's our governors, our school boards, or the federal government going in there and just now creating these laws that are just telling parents what they need to believe and how they need to raise their children. That's not what they're there for. And that just sets a very dangerous precedent that we've set on other issues. And here just goes another one where now it's going to be affecting your kids to the point where they can just start snatching your kids away over the simplest things, or putting them in institutions and getting paid to actually do that because somebody claimed, something that went against their law. So we need to be very careful on these issues. And I'm not here to offend anybody. Again, I have gay family members. I know trans people. I have no problem with the LGBTQ community. You live your life, bro. Though you want to change from a man to a woman, that's your prerogative. I don't care. I don't look at you as any different. You're in America, the land of the free, home of the brave. Do what you want to do. But when we start talking about these babies, and we're not talking about high school, we're talking about kindergartners, first graders, when this stuff is affecting. Come on, man. Like, come on. In Joe Biden's words, come on, man.
Jamel, the question about the book.
Yes. So the next one, and I want to also say welcome, Plug Studio Network. Thanks for joining in. What are your thoughts on Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Powernomics?
Claude Anderson. I don't think. Wait, Powernomics.
Yeah, that was actually a question by Plug Studio Network.
Yeah, I don't think I've read Powernomics.
Okay.
I have not. I do see a question over there that says you're a true Republican bashing Dems, the left, LOL. Like, bro, it's not about bashing people, bro. Like we just said in the beginning of this conversation, if somebody on the Republican side does something, wrong, I will call them out too. But this is what I'm talking about being narrow-minded in our approach. I mean, you won't really, and this is not to be cocky or anything, but you won't find a Black Republican as authentic as somebody as I am, can talk the way that I talk, that could actually has experienced these things and live that life. This is not about bashing any one person. In fact, when I go to these urban neighborhoods, I tell them straight up, I say, listen, I'm not sitting here to tell you to elect all Republicans to your board, but how long has your board been all Democrats? What about you elect one? You know what we did in Trenton? We actually did for the first time. You know who that Republican is a trans woman in Trenton, New Jersey, that we just put on my ticket last year, that actually just won a council seat in Trenton, New Jersey, where it was all Democrats. A white trans woman Republican, right, in Trenton, New Jersey. Also, the year that I ran in 2022, although I didn't win, one of the things I did was wake the community up to the fact that in Trenton, New Jersey, they didn't elect their own school board. The mayor did. The mayor had the power to that. Most people didn't even know that. So we got a referendum put on there, and Trenton residents for the first time voted to put that power back in their own hands. So just a couple of months ago, they had their first election with the people of Trenton, New Jersey, being able to elect their own school board. You know where else they do that? Newark, New Jersey. The mayor picks your school board. Why is it in those underserved and Black communities that happens? You go to every suburban neighborhood, the people that vote for the school board. They're changing school boards all over the state. These little things that are happening and nobody's paying attention to, but they want to talk about Donald Trump grabbed this or that. Like, come on, man. It's not about attacking Dems or Republicans. Again, as I said to people in the hood, why don't you just put one or two Republicans on your board? You know what that will do? That will at least hold the other side accountable. Because as you've had these 100% Democratic boards the entire time, what has happened? Has your life gotten better? Have your schools gotten better? Have your streets, has the trash been picked up? Has the violence gotten better? Is there less drugs in community? In a lot of the cases, the answer is no. So why don't you put somebody there that can help hold them accountable? You don't like what they did, vote them out next time, but you have the power to do these things. Let's try something different and start voting for the person, not the party, putting people over politics, putting people over party. That's all I'm about.
Okay. Jamel, you have anything?
I think we hit all the questions.
Yeah, he hit all the questions.
I know that we have a couple of things, and then I'm make sure, because your campaign manager is gonna get me if I don't. Tell the people about your, and we gotta do it short because we are over. Tell the people about your organizations that you're a part of, and I know Liv one ask you, if you are elected, what's gonna be different about you compared to the last people that was in office?
Yeah. No, thank you. We recently, a few months ago, started the Darius Mayfield Foundation, which will help, one, increase name recognition throughout the district through good deeds. The mission of that is to provide quality education and school choice to diverse American communities while helping close the transportation gap in underserved rural and urban neighborhoods. So over the last about 3 months, I've probably met with almost 24. Me and my team have met with almost 24 different members, either of Congress or their teams in Congress, to talk about our initiative, the transportation gap, which is specifically focusing on, like I said, helping people within that 2-mile radius in underserved rural and urban neighborhoods that can't get to school by school bus because they don't provide those things. So providing them with gift certificates to take ride sharing programs, or partnering up with cab companies in those areas and doing it in a safe way, and different things of that sort. So we are focusing on that. Obviously, the education part, as I talked about with you guys, is very important as well, where we eventually want to provide grants, right? If we're not going to put school choice in some of these neighborhoods right now, hopefully we can raise enough money to start giving people grants out of our own foundation and allowing their parents to send them to private schools, not just because they're an athlete, but because they're worth something and we believe in them. And, their parents are great people that are teaching them well, but just may not have access to the resources needed to get their kids where they need to be in the educational sense and things of that sort. So I'm all about that, grassroots work, which I guess would go into your other question, which is how would I be different than my opponent? Really just being an authentic person. I can't stress it enough that a lot of the people, most of the people we all see in politics, man, these people are bought. And I know we use these words a lot, and this is on both sides. They're bought and paid for, right? They're, whether it's the teachers unions that got them under their wing, in fact, me and my opponent, 90% of her money last time I ran came from teachers unions, lawyers, big business, pharma companies, and over 90% of my funds came from small donations of $200 or less, right? And we raised, my first time running ever in my life for anything, I raised $250,000 just getting on the phone, hustling, doing fundraisers. I was a candidate that actually talked to people. One of the things people would tell me all the time, they'd be like, this is the actual candidate? Because most candidates either won't make fundraiser calls because they're not willing to put in that work, or they have other people doing it for them. I come from the car business. I'm used to making phone calls and things. I did all this myself. So you'll have somebody that's authentic, that actually was giving donors my cell phone number, calling them from my cell phone, letting them know at the end of it, if you have any questions or problems, just text or call me anytime, right? Again, I am from the freest generation to ever walk this earth. I come from one of the, and I hate to say this is no diss to anybody else, but from one of the last great generations in this country right now, because of the things that we were afforded with, because I got to live on both sides of the aisle, being from the hood, having family and friends there, moving to those suburban areas. So this is why, you see a model like Not Black, Not White American, because I genuinely understand both sides of the track, right? I've lived there. I've lived in those things. I understand the differences. I understand the nuances, and I can navigate in both of those worlds quite easily. And I think it's a gift that God's blessed me with. And that's why I'm here, with people like yourself today and running for Congress, because I believe I'm one of the people that can actually do that and genuinely and organically bring people together. Bonnie Watson Coleman, again, it's funny. We talk about the LGBT community issue and things like that. Listen, I'll be the first to tell you, she's probably the biggest proponent, of that movement and what's going on, but never speaking of any nuance like we're speaking of it right now, and not truly understanding, what people feel and actually trying to bring people together. She's just further fanning the flames. I heard she went to an event for a community center opening in Franklin, which Franklin, we coming out there very soon. We got like 10 events lined up. We're going through Franklin Park crazy this year. But she was at a food bank opening. Everybody got up. All the speakers got up and talked about the community and helping the kids and education. She got up there as the last speaker and said, Republicans are crazy. Started going all this stuff. She just can't separate it. And part of that, I take blame for some of that, because I don't know if you guys know this, but last year during the election, of all the talk they talk about with conspiracy theories and cheating and all this, I actually became the first county in American history to have every single Dominion machine shut off on the day of election throughout the whole day. On election day in 2022. Little old me. I was the only county in New Jersey that had the DOJ come to it during election, and they announced this in the newspapers. They were in Middlesex County. Guess what? I ended up winning in Middlesex County. The first time ever running, 46% of the vote in Middlesex County, with our largest county with over 90,000 votes. Never ran a day in my life. A lot of my family's from Middlesex County. They know our last name. My cousin was a former IBF cruiserweight champion of the world. My uncle ran an African school, out in Irish school, out in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where we grew up and things of that sort. So they knew us. So we don't even know we even won those things because of all the shenanigans they were pulling and literally shut off the machines all across Mercer County and Trenton, New Jersey, where I, as a Black Republican, knocked on over 6,000 doors. These things are real. These things are actually happening. We just had a Republican councilwoman shot 7 times in the face, 7 times in the body, about a mile from where I live in my district a couple of months ago. A couple of days after that, another Republican councilman was shot and killed in my district. I just had my house broken into about 3-4 weeks ago. People, while I'm sleeping right there on the couch, came through my house while we were there, 5 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot of stuff going on that people don't understand or realize in this time. So what you'll get from me is somebody that's unafraid. With all those things that I'm telling you going on, Again, I'm still from the freest generation to ever roam this earth. If I'm sacrificed one day or something happens, because that was my purpose. But I promise you, I will always speak out for not only my people, all Americans, because we are all human at the end of the day, and we live in the greatest country to ever face this earth. And right now, what you see happening to it is going to have a profound effect on all of us, and our kids, their kids are not going to be able to enjoy this country and live the life that so many of us were blessed to live. So I promise you, I will always be real. I will always be a man that comes to every community. I don't care if I'm an elected congressman or I'm still just running. You can reach out to me. I'll be there to do whatever I can, walk, do events, whatever it is. I will always be a real person that presents himself that way and actually has a heart for the things that I'm saying and has a heart for the people, rather than these people that make you think that they do. But again, it's about the results and the reality of what you see, not what people are saying to you at the end of the day. And if we just look at the results and the reality, you'll understand there's no possible way that these people can actually, a lot of them could actually care about you, because if they did, they would have the same passion that I have right now, even with them sitting in these offices, and make sure these things get done. I always will, and I promise you guys that.
Thank you. You got anything before
Thank
we
you for
get
your
ready?
time.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Definitely appreciate your words. Your point of view. Hopefully, it's opened up a lot of other people's eyes, and kind of crushed some of those stereotypes.
I really hope so
Absolutely.
too, man.
Now, hopefully you're going to stay in touch with us. Make sure. Also, I know I have to say, please check out if you ever want somebody to help educate y'all about the LGBTQ further, or you want to work with somebody who's a true advocate and open-minded, please check out IME. She definitely is a good advocate.
I have no problem with that, and we can talk about that more. Like I said, I'm a real dude. You know, as long as we come from a place of common sense and intelligence and respect, I can have conversations with anybody. I think that's the way it needs to be. That's the way it always was when we were all growing up. But right now, we're losing that. Right now, they're on this side, they're on this side. There's no conversation. So every time they meet, it's violence, it's clashes, it's just the extremities of everything. And that's a very dangerous place for all of us to be in right now. So I will talk to anybody. I'll go to a CNN. I'll come to an LGBTQ, event we can set up and talk about that. Anybody. And I will always have the utmost respect for everybody.
Well, we appreciate you coming on to our show, Liv.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. And anytime you guys want to have me back, I enjoyed the conversation for you guys. I come back in a heartbeat. So whatever
we got hit kind of hard. We couldn't even ask you all the questions we ran on exit.
Now you see why that podcast I was on last night went 2.5 hours. I told you their show is usually only an hour. We went almost 3 hours.
I just know 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, but truly appreciate it. And
very interesting.
Part two.
Definitely a part two.
Definitely.
Yeah, you got to come out this way to see us, all right?
Yeah, just let me know. Listen, you got your mirror stuff. She sets my whole schedule, everything. She already know if I'm available. I'm about doing anything. I'm there. I'm there.
Oh, you got one question she asked me. The president and owner of IME asked, would you consider being an ally IME? So she gonna talk to you about that later.
Okay, awesome. Let's do it, man. I'm an ally for all humans. I love human life. I love people.
All right. Well, guys, this is EBDP. I'm Lisa Ward. Y'all so
Olivia.
We're gonna get them on it. You gotta get them on it.
I was trying to do ladies first.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do it again. I'm Lisa Ward.
I'm Olivia Tashay.
And that's
thanks for tuning in to EBD podcast.
Most definitely. And we out, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Guys.